Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
A 64-year-old Florida man definitely isn't going to be winning any awards for Neighbor of the Year after he was arrested by authorities in Pinellas County this week for defecating on his neighbor's property. According to reports, the incident took place just after 4:30 p.m. on March 4th in the city of Clearwater when Kenneth Carlisle allegedly stepped out of his RV camper completely naked and started walking up his next-door neighbor's driveway. For some unknown reason, when he got to the neighbor's porch, he proceeded to defecate on top of a glass table there before heading back to his RV. The bizarre and disgusting incident was allegedly captured from two different angles by the victim's home security cameras. When the neighbor realized what had happened, they called the police. When officers arrived at the scene, they found Carlisle still completely naked inside his RV. It said that he was extremely uncooperative, but was eventually taken into custody. Though Carlisle's bond was set at just $250 for the incident involving the glass table, authorities say that he remains in jail because he was already facing several other charges at the time of his arrest. These charges were related to an incident from last December where Carlisle was reportedly caught firing multiple guns into a lake near his house while seated in his car. Apparently, he was also drunk at the time. At the time of this recording, it's still unclear what motivated Carlisle to defecate on his neighbor's property.
Authorities in Santa Fe, New Mexico say that a police officer and a civilian motorist are dead this week following a fatal vehicle chase initiated by a call about an alleged kidnapping. According to reports, the incident began at around 11 a.m. on March 2nd, when Santa Fe police were called to the Rancho Vizcaya apartments with reports about a kidnapping. According to the caller, an unknown man armed with a knife had stolen a vehicle with a female victim inside. At approximately 11:15 a.m., police spotted the stolen vehicle near Sawmill Road and St. Francis Drive. When they attempted a traffic stop, the driver fled onto Interstate 25, traveling north in the highway's southbound lanes. At some point, the suspect got off the highway, only to drive back on, traveling south in the northbound lanes. The chase continued until a serious crash occurred at mile marker 286, involving at least 4 vehicles. These vehicles were later identified as 2 Santa Fe police patrol cars, the fleeing vehicle, as well as 1 uninvolved vehicle. Sadly, the crash claimed the lives of 2 people, Santa Fe police officer Robert Duran, as well as the driver of the 4th vehicle, a retired firefighter named Frank Lovato. When additional police officers and emergency responders arrived at the scene following the crash, they could not find the male suspect behind the alleged kidnapping, but were able to locate the woman initially believed to be the victim. She was subsequently rushed to the hospital to be treated for injuries sustained during the crash, and police announced that they were still searching for the suspect. However, a couple of days later, the case took a surprising turn when it was announced that upon further investigation, police were questioning whether there had been a kidnapping at all. Instead, they said they now believe the supposed victim, Janine Jaramillo, had been the one driving the stolen vehicle during the chase. According to reports, this wouldn't be the first time Jaramillo has been involved in a crime like this. Just a few months ago, she was allegedly involved in a similar crime in the city of Grants, and before that had been involved in at least 2 other incidents where she tried to claim a boyfriend was responsible for crimes she had committed. Reports allege that Jaramillo has been involved in as many as 10 separate criminal incidents, but each time, charges against her have not stuck or she has received probation, never staying in jail for more than a few months. Apparently, that may change though, as Jaramillo has now been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, receiving or transferring a stolen motor vehicle, aggravated fleeing from a law enforcement officer, and tampering with evidence. At the time of this recording, the situation is still under investigation.
Representatives from the NYPD say that a 29-year-old man is dead this week after an argument over noise levels in his apartment caused his roommates to murder him. According to reports, the incident took place at around 3 a.m. on March 4th when a 21-year-old man and a 20-year-old woman were loudly arguing inside their apartment on Perry Avenue in the city's Norwood neighborhood. During the heated exchange, the couple's 29-year-old roommate allegedly asked them to keep their voices down, however, became frustrated when they did not listen. As a result, at some point he retreated to his own room, turning on some loud music to drown out the noise of the argument. This apparently enraged the couple so much that they attacked their 29-year-old roommate, stabbing him several times in the neck and chest. By the time emergency responders arrived at the scene, there was nothing they could do, and the man was pronounced dead. At the time of this recording, it appears that neither the name of the victim nor the names of the two suspects have been released. However, it has been reported that the 21-year-old man and the 20-year-old woman are now each facing charges of murder, manslaughter, and criminal possession of a weapon.
Authorities in Pierce County, Washington say that a 22-year-old man is facing murder charges this week after he intentionally ran over another man several times while in the drive-thru lane at a local fast food restaurant. According to reports, the incident took place at around 6:30 p.m. on February 26th at a Jack in the Box restaurant in the community of Spanaway. It allegedly began when the 22-year-old suspect, Christian Dressel, got into the location's drive-thru lane in his white SUV, right behind 68-year-old David Brown and his wife Sherry. According to witnesses, Dressel became aggressive almost immediately after getting into the drive-thru, intentionally ramming the back of David's car several times. This prompted David to get out of his vehicle and try to talk to Dressel, possibly believing that the situation had been an accident. However, as David approached the white SUV, Dressel refused to acknowledge him. Instead, he waited for David to walk in front of his vehicle before intentionally running him over. After allegedly reversing over David's body several times, Dressel reportedly yelled out his window at Sherry before taking off. Sadly, David would die as a result of his injuries. Dressel was tracked down 2 days later when his mother called 911 to report that she believed that her child had killed someone and then fled the scene. Dressel was arrested on March 1st without incident. Though police originally theorized that the crime could have been the result of road rage, they now believe that the crime was even more chilling and senseless, and that instead it was a case of mistaken identity. The reason behind this theory is because of what Dressel yelled at Sherry before fleeing the crime scene. He reportedly shouted, quote, "Tell your effing boyfriend to stay away from my girl." It's now believed that at the time the incident took place, Dressel may have been following a vehicle that he saw leaving his girlfriend's house, at some point confusing it for the one being driven by David Brown. At the time of this recording, Dressel is facing several charges, including first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and tampering with evidence. His bail has been set at $1.5 million.
Authorities in Martin County, Florida, say that they have charged a 34-year-old man with murder this week after they discovered what they believe to be the remains of a missing woman. According to reports, 57-year-old Cynthia Cole, who went by the name Cindy, was last seen on the night of February 24th when she attended an event called Jammin' Jensen in downtown Jensen Beach. Though friends alleged that nothing out of the ordinary happened that night, Cindy was not heard from or seen afterwards and was soon reported missing. Detectives soon zeroed in on a suspect, Cindy's 34-year-old handyman named Keoki Demich. Apparently, Demich had worked for the 57-year-old for years and made several false statements to police when he was interviewed. When authorities uncovered video footage of Demich in Cindy's car near his home on the night she went missing, they placed him under arrest. Following the arrest, investigators made another trip to Cindy's home, where one of them discovered that the top of the septic tank in the backyard appeared to be open. After a night of digging, they uncovered human remains sometime early on March the 5th. Police now believe that these are Cindy's remains, though at the time of this recording, a formal identification has not been made. Demich is now facing charges of second-degree murder in the case, though a motive behind the crime remains unclear. It's believed that Demich murdered Cindy in her home shortly after she was last seen, then dumped her body where it was later found.
Representatives from the NYPD say that the victim of a phone theft was left with the last laugh this week after he duped the alleged suspect into getting arrested for the crime. According to reports, the incident began at around 11 p.m. on March 1st, when the 20-year-old victim was riding the subway near 34th Street Penn Station. As he was sitting on a northbound E-train, his phone was allegedly snatched by a 57-year-old man named Kevin Cooper, who immediately fled after the theft. Figuring he had nothing to lose, the 20-year-old victim called his stolen cell phone after the crime, believing there might be a chance of recovering it. To his surprise, Cooper picked up. During the phone call, the 20-year-old got an idea. He told Cooper that he'd be willing to buy the stolen phone back from him if they could meet up. Cooper agreed, and they made plans to meet the following day. Unbeknownst to Cooper, when he showed up at the meeting, he was actually walking into a trap. The 20-year-old was working with the police. Unfortunately for Cooper, he hadn't just shown up to the meeting with the stolen phone either. He was also carrying 2 Ziploc bags allegedly containing crack. Cooper was arrested at the scene and is now facing charges of grand larceny, criminal possession of stolen property, and criminal possession of a controlled substance. According to reports, Cooper has an extensive criminal history and has been arrested more than 50 times.
This week, authorities in Essex County, New Jersey announced that a 31-year-old man had been convicted in connection with a terrifying home invasion case that claimed the lives of 3 people. According to reports, the incident took place on November 5, 2016, when Jeremy Arrington broke into the victim's home in Newark in the middle of the day. Armed with a gun, he proceeded to tie up the 29-year-old homeowner, her 4 children, and a 23-year-old college student named Syasia McBurrows, who was visiting the family at the time. Once the victims were helplessly immobilized, Arrington began to attack them with a knife. The youngest victims were just 8 and 11 years old. The horrific attack continued until one of the homeowner's 13-year-old twins managed to escape from her restraints, hiding in a closet while she called police. By the time police arrived, Arrington had fled the scene, and 3 of the victims, the 2 youngest children and Syasia McBurrows, were dead. The other 3 victims all suffered injuries but were able to make a recovery. Arrington was later tracked down by police and arrested following a standoff. Perhaps most chilling of all is the senseless reason for why Arrington reportedly committed the heinous crime. It was because one of the victims had reposted a police alert on Facebook that named him as a suspect in a previous shooting and assault case. On March 5th, Arrington was found guilty on 28 charges related to the 2016 crime, including 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of attempted murder, burglary, and criminal restraint. His sentencing is scheduled for April 18th, where he faces the possibility of life in prison.
Authorities in Shasta County, California say that a 39-year-old woman is facing multiple charges this week after she was accused of faking her own kidnapping more than 5 years ago. According to reports, the incident began on November 2nd, 2016, when Sherry Papini left her home in Redding, California, telling her husband that she was going on a run. When she failed to pick up her 2 kids from daycare that afternoon, her husband became worried and began looking for her. To his horror, he discovered her cell phone and earbuds abandoned along her jogging route and immediately called the police. The alleged kidnapping prompted a multi-state search for the missing mother, which lasted for more than 3 weeks. Finally, on Thanksgiving Day, there was a break in the case, when Sherry was found on the side of a highway about 150 miles from her house. She appeared to have been beaten, chained to some sort of object, and even branded, but she was alive. When questioned by police, Papini gave a harrowing and detailed account of her alleged abduction and the horrors she faced, saying that she had been taken by 2 armed Hispanic women. She even gave a sketch artist detailed descriptions of the alleged perpetrators, and these drawings were subsequently circulated in hopes that they would provide new leads. However, police were unable to identify the suspects. After years more of investigation, it eventually became clear why. According to investigators, Papini made the whole thing up. Instead of being abducted, police now say that the 39-year-old left her home of her own volition back in November of 2016, traveling to Costa Mesa, where she stayed with an ex-boyfriend. Authorities uncovered the boyfriend's connection to the case when his DNA was recovered from Papini's clothing, and he admitted to helping stage the disappearance. According to him, some of the injuries had been inflicted with a hockey puck, while the so-called brand marks had been made with a wood-burning tool that they had purchased from Hobby Lobby. When investigators approached Papini with these contradictory details back in 2020, she reportedly stuck to her story, even when they repeatedly reminded her that it was a crime to lie to a federal agent. It appears that this isn't the only thing that Papini has to worry about now, though, as in addition to lying to investigators, she is now being charged with mail fraud in connection with 35 reimbursement payments she applied for from the California Victim Compensation Board following her return to her family. The payments allegedly totaled $30,000 and were for visits to a therapist after the so-called abduction, as well as for the ambulance that took her to the hospital on the day she was found. According to reports, if convicted of the mail fraud charges, Papini could be looking at up to 20 years in prison. She also faces an additional 5 years for making false statements to investigators. Finally, in addition to these hefty sentences, it said that Papini could be slapped with a fine of up to $250,000 for each one of the charges. At the time of this recording, Papini remains in police custody since being charged on March 3rd. That's it for this edition of Crimes of the Week. If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. Thank you for watching.